Okay, it's a little video on how to modify this Kenwood TH-K20 2-meter radio so that it will transmit at 143.8. For 2-meter radios, they're either cheap, like the Baofeng and or Quansheng. They're quite cheap and quite unreliable in my experience with this one anyway. Or you've got the Allen Co and Icoms, which are like 300 quid. In between is something like this Kenwood. So it's a Kenwood, so it should be reasonable quality. The only problem is it will receive at 143.8, but it won't transmit. So they're both set at 143.8, and if I go click here, that's receiving. But if I try and transmit with this, I get nothing. It won't transmit, but it will transmit on 144 and above, so 2 meter, the 2 meter band. So the reason it won't transmit below 144 is that 144 to 146 is the 2 meter band. So this radio is designed for the 2 meter band. But like many other radios like this, you can internally modify it so that it will transmit at 143.8. This one comes pre-modified, so it will already transmit on 143.8. This one needs a modification. Depending on the radio, some of them you open it up and there's a loop of wire and you cut the wire and then it will transmit. Okay, but for this Kenwood, it's a little bit more complicated. We have to desolder a part. But happily, Kenwood have provided the book of instructions. And they just say it's provided as is, and they just show, once you've taken it apart, they identify the diode, this one D, and you just need to desolder it and remove it. So that's what we're going to do. All right, turn off and remove the battery pack. Ta-da! With the antenna, channel selector knob, with the 2 knobs. So just take a firm grip, pull, with the side jack accessory cover, which is this little thing. I'm not going to remove it entirely. Then undo these 2 screws. Alright, carefully lift the front panel up from the chassis starting from the bottom. Be careful not to damage the speaker wires as you're opening the radio. Okay, so there's a little hook there. So I'm just going to hook my finger under there and pull. Okay, and now I'm pulling down. Pulling down and working it back and forth a little bit. And there we go, and there are the speaker wires that they say to be careful not to damage. So the diode that we want to remove is D. There. It's teeny tiny. Teeny tiny. Okay. Let's do this. So, because this is teeny tiny work, if you're like me, you may need these. Or this, which is quite handy. One of these as well is also quite handy, as you can see. But I especially like jeweler's loops to these. So I can't really show you how to use this because my head will be in the way. But that gives you a really good close-up view of what's going on. And a couple of other useful things, if you find you need them, is a solder sucker. So with this one, you heat up the solder so that it's molten, you press the button, the little piston sucks it all up, sucks the solder up into here, and it cools and you can just sort of rattle it out like that. So that's actually quite handy. I'll probably use that as a first resort. There's also this de-soldering wire or solder wick. And the idea is this is like a braid, it's like a fine braid, and you heat it up and heat up the solder, push it into the solder, and the solder will flow into the weave and it'll basically suck up into this. So that's another option as well. And also, you're obviously going to need a soldering iron. And you really do need, for this very, very fine work, you do need an electronics soldering iron like this one. And I always store it with a bit of solder on the end. So while it's hot, I've touched it with a bit of solder, and that helps protect the tip. So it's obviously not hot at the moment. I'm going to heat it up in a minute, and we'll take this off, and we'll have a go. Have a go? Yeah, have a go. Why not? Have a go if you think you're hard enough. Pour myself a bit of courage. Remember, don't drinking while solder something. So I think we've waited long enough. There's our solder. You can see that. And now I'm just going to flick the solder onto here. There it is. And then what you need to do is you need to shock it. So this is a damp pad, damp bit of cloth, and you just need to shock it like this. And what the shocking does, you're only supposed to do it twice. I always find it takes 3 times, but anyway, the shocking cleans it. So now it's super clean, and that's important because the cleaner it is, the faster it will transfer the heat, and the less chance that it's going to heat up the board and break something else. I might go in with the soldering wick. So with this, I'm going to coat it with some flux, which will help the solder stick to it. But this stuff is really toxic, so you should wash your hands afterwards. Blimey, look at that. And clean my desk afterwards as well. Okay. Don't put it on there for too long and move it. So that should have got a fair bit of the solder onto the wick. Now we'll do the other side. Okay. Melt the solder. Pull the wick away. So, looks like we've got a fair bit of solder. Can't really see. It looks like we've got a bit of solder on the end there, that silver stuff. Cool. So again, going to coat the end of the tip just to protect it. And it looks like I have, unfortunately, melted a little bit of the cover with the soldering iron. Never mind. Alright, so I'm going to go in again with the jeweler's loop. So it looks pretty good. There is a burn mark on there, but it's not too badly burnt. Pretty hardy, this circuit board stuff. So now I'm going to try and lift it off. There we go. Da, 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 da. And there, look how teeny tiny that thing is. That's it. Assemble the transceiver. Installation is the reverse of removal. So we're going to stick it up there. Make sure that's clear. Okay. Pushing gently from the bottom. It's not quite in. There we go. Push it down. Lovely. So I've reprinted this and cleaned the table and washed my hands because that flux stuff is quite horrible. So now we're ready to reset the radio. Press and hold the F key while turning the radio on. Release the F key. Use the channel knob to select full reset, FL.RST. Yep. FL.RST. press the F, press F, F. Awesome. Let's try it. 143.8. My radio thinks it's transmitting. 143.8, 143.8. Let's try it. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. So, it works. Should I say, I'll leave a link to these instructions in the description down below. It's designed for the 2 meter band, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah.